Now, despite Arsenal playing last night, the news was mostly dominated by more transfer drama. Out of nowhere, Arsenal surprisingly bid for Ollie Watkins of Aston Villa. In this video, we're going to talk about what is going to happen with that deal right now and what this means for Arsenal's clear identification and transfer strategy for the last coming days. So let's get into it. Now, like many of you, this Ollie Watkins news was definitely a massive surprise to me. Not only did I do a video yesterday about Matisse Tel, and I still think there's some more links with Arsenal now, but there's a lot of teams obviously interested. I really did not expect Arsenal to be willing to spend up to £60 million, potentially even more if there's another bid to come through, on someone whose future looked to be settled and someone that hasn't really been spoken about in a very long time within the club. Now, if you don't know, what I mean is that Ollie Watkins has obviously been a player that has been linked to Arsenal years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, Arsenal have really liked him, and he's clearly an Arsenal fanboy from when he was a young kid, where he has always backed Arsenal. Now, Ollie Watkins' quality is completely undeniable. You saw his goals and assist tally last year, you see him this year, even if he has missed quite a lot of chances, including against us, of course. But for Arsenal, who really only scout youngsters and people that can improve in the team, trying to get a 29-year-old for that amount of money is definitely not really an Arsenal move. Now, first of all, I can see the concerns about the money, and I don't really disagree with them in many ways. I do think it could be quite a hard deal to compete, and £60 million for someone that is probably going to stop us getting that Šeško or potentially getting Isak, who I don't think is possible, of course, doesn't really line up with the long-term plan and that the club has shown that they wanted to do over the last few years. I also do like it though, because it does show a win now sort of mentality. He is a striker that would definitely excel Arsenal instantly and have an impact, but as in a season where Arsenal aren't necessarily fighting for too much, you know, we are still in the Prem, but it's a long way back. I don't know if it's worth spending £60 million on a striker where we probably should have done this last January or even the January before. It doesn't really make sense with timings. Now, there's a lot of credible sources talking about this bid, and apparently we actually bidded on Monday, and there's been some talks for around a couple of weeks now, but I do think this kind of shows where Arsenal are at in their recruitment. Now, some people will criticise it, and I do think there is moments to criticise it, but I think what is quite clear that has happened is that they've sat down and spoken to the scouting team of who is the strikers that Arteta wants, who are the strikers that are going to elevate the team right now, and who is willing to join nonetheless. Now, when we were linked with Šeško, and that isn't obviously looking like it's going to happen now, I said that the main reason that isn't going to happen is because the player does want to come to Arsenal, but he isn't forcing a move as much as other players. He isn't going to push Leipzig into making that decision, and ultimately they'll just say no matter what. Ollie Watkins is definitely one of the players on the market because of his affinity with Arsenal, which has been well publicised over the last couple of years, that he probably will force a move. He's always said he wants to play for Arsenal, it's his boyhood club, and obviously at the age of 29, he's 30 in December. This was probably the last opportunity he's ever going to get to leave Villa for a big team, a team bigger than Villa, of course. Now, from that perspective, I don't hate it. He is a brilliant player. He can still play for Arsenal for 2 to 3 years time. I still think he's going to be good. He's never really injured so far, so that's also another great thing on his level, and he's obviously a brilliant player, brilliant progressive player, great running in behind, brilliant player at helping the team, and has so much contributions going forward. He is a real elite striker. However, there is other problems. Now, I have a problem with the timing of the transfer. Now, after hours of that being discussed, it doesn't look like it's necessarily going to happen now, because if you know, Jhon Duran, the secondary striker for Aston Villa, who just the other day has said that Arsenal weren't looking at him, is apparently agreed to move to go to Saudi Arabia for around €77 million. Obviously meaning they're not going to sell both strikers at the same time, so it does kind of put one transfer in, one transfer out. Now, I do think, in my sense, this comes off as quite a panic sort of move from Arsenal. Arsenal probably wanted Watkins, and we probably wanted to get a deal done, but because they were obviously discussing with Jhon Duran to go to Saudi Arabia, I think we have thrown our name into that hat prematurely to sort of change their decision before they actually make one, because if Jhon Duran leaves, that basically becomes impossible. Now, it still looks like Jhon is leaving, which is unfortunate, because I think that kind of puts Ollie Watkins out of the picture for us. However, Unai Emery, after the game against Celtic, did say some quite interesting notes where he basically said anything can still happen, so maybe there's a way that that gets rejected and we still get Watkins. Now, from Aston Villa's perspective, I've actually seen a few Arsenal fans say this, but I thought this completely as well. I think they should be selling Ollie Watkins. Now, I know Ollie Watkins is arguably their best player. Now, they have a lot of good forwards, but he is their main guy. But at 29 years old, you are not going to get a 60 mil offer by any other club ever for him. He will quite frankly dwindle his value value as the years go on, and eventually you probably won't get anywhere near that sort of money and will have to replace him. Now Jhon Duran's a perfect replacement. Now he hasn't got the biggest minutes in the world, but he is young and he clearly has a lot of potential to be that #1 striker where teams better than Villa have wanted him for a long time. And I get that they're selling Jhon Duran for a lot of money. 77 million euros is a hell of a lot of money to spend. Putting that into pounds, that is around 72 million pounds. If Arsenal ended up bidding again for Ollie Watkins around 65 mil, I would take 65 mil for a 29-year-old, then 72 mil for a 21-year-old who's 8 or 9 years younger. I think there should be some squad planning there with Villa, and Mochi, who's their director of football, will surely sort of understand that, even though it does look like the Jhon deal is done, but you never know what can happen, especially with these Saudi moves. Now looking back at Arsenal, it is still a weird one. Like, I like Watkins as a player and I think he's good. The age can be a bit negotiable. I can see why people are a bit upset about us spending that much money on a 29-year-old, which is absolutely fine. But if you're in a win now sort of mindset, I don't really hate it. I just think the timing is very off. We should have made this signing a couple of weeks ago if we were going to make it. I also think it does show that Arsenal are trying to do things, but I'm not sure if we really have the idea of where to go in this market. Now, like I've said, this market throughout the whole window has got worse and worse, I think, rather than better. And it is literally impossible to get any player from any team. Even Šeško, who plays for Leipzig, who can't even get a win in the Champions League, 1 win in 8, are forcing him to stay, and that's the sort of level that we're at in football right now. Now, no matter what, I still think we have to make signings. I have always been of that notion of just sign anyone at this window because I think it matters, but the longer the transfer window's gone on and we've sort of survived, I think we're not really going to win the league in my opinion, then I actually don't know what is the point of wasting and ruining our transfer strategy to spend so much money on someone that clearly isn't what we wanted in the first place. Now, there's players that I can have exceptions for this for, such as Watkins. I think I probably would make quite an exception for. I think he's good enough, but there's no point of just going in for the sake of anyone when that means that we're not going to be able to get the targets that we really want to improve the team. Now, I still expect Arsenal to do things in this window, and we still need to do things such as buy Nipan. We need to get that over the line. He needs to be with the first team, and obviously Matheus Tel would be a brilliant player to get in as well. These two are loans or cheap deals for Nipan as well that aren't going to really affect the long-term future of the club, but could be a brilliant player just to get in now so we can actually spend in the summer. We're going to have to spend a lot in the summer, which is quite clear anyway, and I can sort of live off the team a little bit if we get them 2 players in and then we end up spending a lot in the summer to improve the squad. However, Tel is obviously going to be hard, and with Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United and a host of other teams interested in him, it's going to be hard to convince him to come, even if it is on loan or a permanent or loan with a permanent in the future. That's never going to be a guarantee, and I don't really want us to put all our eggs in that basket thinking it will be, because we've seen this what happens before, and then we're in a situation where we need to buy anyone, and there's less than a week left. We don't have time to really faff around. Overall, I'd say the Watkins links make me a bit excited about what Arsenal are trying to do, but also a little bit worried about what we're trying to do. Are we throwing away all our strategies? Have we given up on all the targets we actually want? And are we just going to throw money at the wall, which we shouldn't do? However, there is players out there and we are willing to spend, so maybe you can find a way to work it with Villa, work it with other teams to get into a player that would be good. I think it's quite clear that we want to sign a striker over a winger, and like I said, Tel would probably play up front for us but can also play on the wing, so maybe that solves both of them in one situation. But we'll have to know, because we can't keep going on like this. We need to have some clarity on what's going on. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Ollie Watkins news. It probably won't happen, but let me know what you think about the news overall and what we know about the deal, and if not, I'll see you in the next one.